I'd like to consider our 12 texts E, F, G, H altogether. The wild world of plants. Hubris is so difficult to think about if we restrict our thinking to humans and animals. For humans, to commit hubris is outrage, and there can be all sorts of legal dimensions. For animals, it's just being oversexed or over-violent. I should have said it in reverse order. But for plants, there's such variety. They can do wrong things in so many different ways. It can be excessive wood and leaf production, or it can be excessive fruit production. Whatever it is, it's where the plant is out of whack. It's not doing what it should be doing if it's going to benefit humanity. So to take, for example, the shrub called the white lupin, if it gets wood crazy, that means there's too much emphasis on one aspect of its productivity and not enough on another. Similarly with almond trees, this is our 12 text F. If there is too much effort that the plant puts into all of its nutrition, all of its greenness, so to speak, can I say it that way? Then the fruit production starts atrophying. Again, lack of balance, being out of whack, where the integrity of the system of life is thrown off balance. And these are observations made by a scientist who's interested in the botanical realities of plants that happen to benefit humanity. Then I love the fact that in our 12 text G, when it comes to the problem, well, how to fix these plants, especially when it comes to bearing fruit. Well, for that kind of purpose where it's fruit bearing, then you have to cut down on the green, cut down on the branches. And the metaphor that is used here in this scientific document, Theophrastus' research about plants, is something that we who have been reading poetry are already so accustomed to, that hubris is to be associated with crookedness, whereas dikē, the opposite, let's call it absolute justice, is associated with straightness, or the tendency towards straightness. So if you take a wild plant and you prune it, the fact that you say about it that it is an act of straightening out the little critter, what that means is that we're right back into the metaphorical world of dikē as not just straight line, but good vegetation, versus hubris, a crooked line, and bad vegetation. So I love the coming together. And then, to top it all off, the shortest text here, our 12 text H, which is the most complex. And I dedicate what I'm going to say here to my dear old friend Marcel Detienne, who wrote a brilliant book called The Gardens of Adonis. Here we're dealing with a situation where the sexiest hero that you can imagine, the sexiest male hero in this case, is somebody who is quite sexually active but still sterile. And that's what seems to happen with plants gone wild too, is that precisely when a plant goes wild, as in the case of a lettuce that goes to seed, precisely at that point does it lose its potential for fertility, because if lettuce goes to seed, then there's no fertility by way of all the leaves that it can produce for humanity. And Adonis is, of course, somebody who in myth can actually be hidden inside a lettuce by Aphrodite if his fate is endangered. And I like that symbolism. There's been a lot of controversy over whether we can make something universal out of this, and we can't. In Egyptian myths and rituals, lettuce may have one kind of function. In Greek myths and rituals, it may have another. So we shouldn't get stuck on worrying about whether a lettuce going to seed is going to tell the same message to all of humanity. It's culturally conditioned. But I like the version that the Greeks inherited, where in the end, if you have a sterile garden, then it's like Adonis. And of course, the ritual that goes with it is that the courtesans of Athens actually plant little potted plants on the rooftops during the dog days of summer, where you have a very quick growth spurt, but it's an abnormal growth spurt, because as soon as the little potted plants grow in the devastating heat of the dog days of August, they wither and die. And then what do the women do who have planted these potted plants? They mourn for Adonis. And it's a mock mourning. It's a playful, carnivalesque kind of thing that we moderns find so difficult, because the playfulness goes with the seriousness of dramatizing, how shall I say it, unseasonal sterility with seasonal fertility. What takes 9 months for Demeter to do to bring about good plants takes 9 days for the withering son of the dog days to destroy. And it's like a psychodrama of fertility and sterility, all in terms of this beautiful boy who was, in his own term, an abnormal growth, flowering very beautifully and in an untimely way, only to die at the wrong time, wrong place. And that's what the Gardens of Adonis are all about. I can't stop talking about this text, and it's less than a line of printed words. But that's the beauty of Greek mythology and myth, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, I thought I had the last word on hour 12, text H. And then as soon as we finished talking, I thought, I forgot to say the most basic thing about this aphorism, more barren than the Gardens of Adonis. We learned this from Plato. Plato actually uses this aphorism in the Phaedrus, where, of all things, he has in mind letters in literature, that when you read something, if what you're reading is already dead in human discourse, then it's more sterile than the Gardens of Adonis, which means that performance is what brings the power of the word alive. It's performance that keeps it alive. And if you just think of anything that's written down as dead, then it's sterile. And it has to be brought back to life in performance. And how could I neglect to say that when I talked just a few moments ago about the sterility of the Gardens of Adonis? For Plato, the Gardens of Adonis are potentially the written text, as opposed to the dialogues of Socrates, where the words come alive in engagement, involving one human and other humans in discourse with each other, in dialogue with each other.